Welcome to Cash Chats, the podcast from BeCleverWithYourCash.com that helps you make the most of your money. I'm Andy Webb.
And I'm Amelia Murray. Some of the stories we're looking at in Your Money this week are the top ways people pay, big changes to Pret's subscription scheme, and whether bottomless deals are a con.
We'll also be taking you through some of the hits and misses from the community. This is episode 403 of Cash Chats. So how has your week been, Amelia? What's been going on in your money?
It's all very exciting. I don't know if you've noticed, but I'm wearing a orange Adidas jumper, corduroy.
It's very nice. Very
Thank
nice,
you.
yeah.
But the best thing is I got it for £1.50.
That's really cheap. That is very good. And it's nice. It's unique. It's not the thing you see all over the shop. Tell us your secrets.
Exactly. Yeah.
How did you manage this?
I got it for £1.50. It's secondhand, but in great condition. And this is one of the things I have found on Vinted. So I'm a massive fan. I had a little outfit I was wearing on Friday night for the first time, which I got for £3.50. And it was like a little short and crop top set, great for summer. And I was speaking to my boyfriend's mum about it, and she was like, "You didn't get it off Vinted, did you?" And I was like, and she said it kind of with a look in her eye. I was like, yeah. She's like, "Oh yeah, my friends are kind of obsessed as well." But basically what I found is, unlike eBay, where people are really canny, they know the value of their items that they're trying to sell, they're trying to get the highest price. Vinted is full of like a lot more normal people who are either decluttering or aren't really that bothered. It's more about kind of like putting stuff out there because you want to make space in your house or you just want to get rid of it. And you really snapped up some amazing bargains. And I think what I like about it as well is I find bidding too stressful. I don't want to bid for things. I don't want to wait and see if I've got it, like both ways, if I'm selling or buying. Whereas with Vinted, that, you know, people put their price and then you can chip in with an offer and they can say yes or no. And then you just take it from there. And it's great, really straightforward. And yeah, I found some surprisingly like good value clothing items on Vinted.
Yeah. That's a bargain. There used to be, I don't think it still exists. There used to be a thing called, for eBay, called fatfingers.com. I haven't looked if this still exists, but basically it was a trick to find the typos. So again, that kind of thing, you know, eBay, as you say, is like people are quite planned and they kind of almost know what they're looking for. But that was a nice little way as well, finding those kind of rare little things where someone just put something on, there's a typo, and it could result in a bargain. So yeah, that's sounds all really good indeed.
So I'm really happy with that. And my second thing that I'm really happy with is I had a little money admin night on Monday night. So a couple of things I've been meaning to do. It was after I read your article actually on the holiday checklist. And I was like, I'm going on holiday later in the year. One of the things is make sure you've got your GHIC, which is the replacement of the EHIC, which is the health insurance card. And I realized I have no idea where I've got one, have no idea where it is. And I'm like, oh my God, let's get on this. Like replace it. I did one for my boyfriend as well. So we're kind of like, that's all in place. I also realized that Trading 212 have reopened the ISA transfer opportunity. So I opened the account ages ago. You might have remembered I did an article about a nightmare I had with transferring my ISA from one provider to another. Oh my God.
Straight into a new one. Yeah.
I was like, get me out of this. Like, these guys are nightmares. So I opened the Trading 212 account ages ago, that they weren't accepting ISA transfers. And then on Monday night, I checked and they were. Bish, bash, bosh. Money's moved over. I think they did it overnight. It was really quick. Put all my money in. And yeah, and I feel good about it. And it reminds me, you know, in a job I had, we used to have this thing called Finance Fridays, where once a month, me and my colleagues would get together over like a Zoom call, and we would take half an hour to tick through like our money checklist, all the stuff that we've been putting off. And it's all those little things like calling your bank or trying to find a new energy deal, or all those things which you know you've got to do, but you know, life gets in the way. So yeah, I did it for myself on Monday night. So I'm really pleased with that.
Well, I don't know. It's good, isn't it? It is so easy to sort of always put these things off, even like us who are, you know, writing about this stuff every day and we're kind of interested in it as well. Easy to forget to do these things. And I always sort of say to people as well, some of those admin tasks which are maybe less exciting than others is to really just put, like, you know, once a month or even like once a quarter, whatever it is, put some time in your diary, have a glass of wine, put some of your favorite music on, something like that. But just, you know, allocate it, because if you're always trying to fit it in, it's not going to happen. But often they're the things which can be really quite chunky in terms of how much money you save. I mean, it used to be around for things like energy switch. I know it's kind of back now in a sense, but your energy switch and your bank switch is stuff that could make you a decent amount of money. It's worth doing it. It's much better to put your time in for that than stuff which might feel a lot easier and quicker, but doesn't get you much in return, just a few pennies. Which brings me to something that I've not done this week, but I'm going to hope maybe do this weekend. We actually shared it in the newsletter on Thursday morning. This is a money-making app, a market research app, which I did talk about when I did best money-making apps at the start of the year. I included it there, and it's called Be My Eye. And it's not one that I'm a huge fan of, because often when I see these things, the amount of effort that goes into this kind of market research, mystery shopper stuff is ridiculous compared to what you get. But we put it in the newsletter because I spotted, and it seems to be similar for Zoe and Nikki in the team as well. They've got it all different parts of the UK. Loads of take a photo of a restaurant menu deals, which seem pretty quick. Not tried it. Seem pretty easy to do. You can get like £2.50 or something each time you do it. And I thought, okay, that sounds good. I'm not sure I'm going to bother. But I have got my niece and nephew coming to visit this weekend. And I'm thinking we can turn this into a treasure hunt. So what I might do is we get the list up, see what's still there, and get them to go and do it, and then give them the money. So they're motivated because we're going around town, trying out these things, looking for these different menus, and I'll send them the cash. So I've got that planned for the weekend.
I'm glad you said that. I was like, oh God, slave labor. We're going to have a word.
Well, I mean, some people, there's about 10 or 15 going where I am. And if we're walking around town anyway, it's worth doing it. But, maybe, you could keep, if you want to keep some of the money to yourself and get your kids to do, keep half of it, that might be enough to motivate them. See how it goes.
Oh, I love it.
Should we get into the money stories for this week? We've got quite a few to get through. The first one that I'm going to talk about, there's a few different angles to this. In fact, there's quite a few stories talking about how we spend. An interesting time in a sense, coming off the back of that global IT outage last Friday, which if you follow me on, or us, I should say, on Instagram, you'll see I sort of posted the video that morning, going around trying to see exactly what's happening with card payments, because there were a number of issues reported where places just wouldn't take card at all. And that's obviously such a dominant part of how we spend. And this first story is from UK Finance. They're kind of the industry body here who, sort of all the different banks are kind of members of. But they also have all those payment data. And they have looked at for 2023, so the whole of last year. So it's taken a long time for this report to come through, but it's still really interesting. And it's shown, I think the big headline for me is that 1 in 3 adults are using mobile contactless for their payments at least once a month. And that's a big increase from where it was before. So more and more people, and I'm included in this, using their phone to spend. Now that increases substantially. 3 in 4 people, 3/4 of people, when they're 18 to 24, are using their phone. But it drops massively down to 1 in 12 for the over 65. So yes, more people are doing it, but there's a big age sort of difference here in terms of that usage of your phone as your main way that you pay. And obviously, I did cover it in the podcast on Tuesday, why that's not always a good idea just to go out with your phone, why it's important to have more than one card on you if things happen like that global IT outage. But that was really interesting. Some other trends going on. 4 in 10 payments in total are contactless now. So whether it's on your phone or using your card, more and more people just tapping. Has some advantages, some disadvantages. And 51% of all payments are paid by debit card. So by way ahead of all the others. Most people, when they're spending, however it is with their debit card, which kind of makes sense, really. Now, what do you think is in second place, the second most common way to pay after a debit card?
I feel like I want to guess without ruining the game. Should I just say, I don't know, sheep?
Sheep. Yeah, no, come on. If you know the answer, it's good. It's fine. So go on. What do you think it is?
Isn't it?
It is cash. I think that's quite surprising. The second most popular way that people pay is still cash. And what's interesting this year is actually the number of people paying with cash has increased. For the first time in 4 years, it's actually gone up. It's a 4-year high for people, primarily using cash for their spending. But and we'll come back to that in a second with one of your stories, I know. But even though it is the second most common way to pay, it is still pretty low. Just 1 in 8 payments are made with cash. Below that, you've got credit cards, you've got all the other different options that are there and thereabouts that people are using. Faster payments, there's so many different things. So it's easy to get caught up in this sort of, a lot of the news stories were headlines that cash payments increase, and they have, but it's still down the bottom, way, way, way off its peak, and not actually that massive in total. But I still think it's interesting to talk about this because although say it is a smaller number of people, that increase is still interesting because I think we don't know exactly why this is happening, but cost of living crisis, cost of living challenge, as it's been sort of rebranded recently, but that has meant a lot more people have been having to watch their pennies. And you and I both know this. One of the best ways to really keep track of your spending is to use cash. Really helps you budget, really helps you keep track of what you've got and what you're spending. Makes you really think about what you're handing over, whether it's in a shop or in a bar. I mean, how often, you go to a bar, how often do they even show you the terminal? You're just going to tap on this thing that they're holding over there. You've got no idea what you're paying. But when you're using cash, you've got to know exactly what it is. And it kind of just shows to us just how important it is still to have cash. And I think that kind of leads us on to that next story, really, doesn't it?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think we also kind of forget that the world isn't, well, or the UK isn't our town or city. I used to have this when I was in London. Like I'm a debit card contactless person. I don't really like using my phone for payments because I like to keep off my phone, and also the battery is terrible and I do not trust it. But I know, my granny she uses cash, and she does it, to consolidate her spending, to know what she's doing. I think people in maybe more rural areas who have local tradespeople, if you live in a village and you're paying your window cleaner or your gardener, like there's loads more cash transactions that occur in the rest of the country. And so this is why, I mean, it's been a discussion for ages about protecting the access to cash. So the FCA is finally introducing new rules to protect cash. And so it's basically plugging the gap. So if you think about more of those remote areas where there's not a bank, there may not be ATMs, it may not be convenient, there might be a post office. These are the kind of, the considerations that they're taking. So from September the 18th, this is when the rules are being introduced. So banks and building societies will have to assess cash access and understand if additional services are needed when changes are being made to local services. Great. Respond to local residents, community organisations, and representative groups who will be able to request an assessment of whether there are gaps in local cash access. Where significant gaps are found, deliver reasonable additional cash services and keep facilities, including bank branches and ATMs, open until additional cash services identified are available. So this all sounds great. And when we're looking at access to cash, we're not just looking at banks and ATMs and post offices, but there's also banking hubs. So this is fairly new. These are centres where customers of different banks can deposit or withdraw cash. They can also do simple banking services, and they can get advice while they're there. And Labour has said it's planning to roll out 350 of these banking hubs in towns and villages in the next 5 years. So yeah, it's good that the work is being done, and yeah, it'll be interesting to see how it changes things. But another story on this, while we're talking about protecting access to cash, there was a story today about, could this be the end of pennies? So the government has not put in a new order of 1 and 2 penny pieces to the Royal Mint, and apparently isn't expecting to in coming years. Some say they are looking to scrap the pennies. However, I think, like the Treasury has said, it's actually saying there's enough in circulation at the moment. So there's apparently 27 billion pennies in circulation, which sounds plenty. But also, before people get anxious, they're not minted every year. So this is when I was looking at this article. 2p's, the new ones, haven't been minted since 2021, and none were made between 2018 and 2020. So there's no need to panic yet. And if you wanted a fun fact, the last coin taken out of circulation was the halfpenny, or maybe the halfpenny, in 1989.
See, I remember halfpennies. You're too young for this, but I remember the halfpenny G at the tuck shop. And then they went up to 1p. I can't remember whether that was like an early shrinkflation, but whether they got bigger in size as well or not. I don't remember now, but yeah, I remember that happening.
You're a
It's
relic.
interesting. It's interesting with these coins, isn't it, as well? Because the pennies and stuff, I mean, I find them so annoying, so frustrating. And the fewer this, the more cash does overall decline, even though there's sort of slight increase at the moment. It just means they don't need more of them. There's already so many, as you say, so many out there. But I do wonder how much of it is like the pennies is really for most people, they probably would prefer them to be gone anyway. Nothing actually costs less than 5p now, really. I can't imagine there's anything out there where you can get for 1p or 2p, 3p or 4p. I suppose it's that kind of the iterations in between. But often I think it's about, you see it's like something costs, rather than put it as £5, they put it's £4.99 or £4.97 or something like that. It's just about that kind of psychology of making us think it's a little bit cheaper when it's just a few pence. And I wouldn't be sad to see them go at some point, but I don't think they're going to kind of like just stop them. I think it would just get to the point where, there aren't too many. We've got a long while yet.
But what will you throw in the wishing well?
Oh, that's true. Who makes them? What happens to the wishing wells? Who do the Trevi Fountain or the little local one in your local park? Where does that money go?
Put pound coins in now.
Well, you have to put a little contactless pad on there for your wish. Does it do the same thing? Maybe you have to buy. Well, that what will happen is you'll buy yourself one of those like the novelty ones you get in museums sometimes, where you put your penny in and then you cost you £1 or something to flatten it. Or producer Steve has just sort of chipped in actually with a really, really, really good point. Penny machines in arcades. So I'm going to roll back on what I said. I'm going to take this back now. We need to keep the pennies and the coppers. It's live. Wasn't that well thought out a position, was it? But yeah, I think we'll see them. They have some advantages then. I'll give you that. But mainly the arcades with small children. Bearing in mind, that's often something I do with my nephew when he's around. Something that is ending, though, we know is going to end. In fact, we've known this for a while. It was coming, but it has now been confirmed by Ofcom, who are the regulator for many of our kind of utilities, is the end of what they are terming in surprise increases to bills. So broadband, mobile phone, pay TV. These are the kind of things where, and we've covered it plenty on the podcast and over on the website, where normally every kind of March or April, you get a letter through the post and it says, we are increasing your bill by something plus the rate of inflation. And that's what I mean by a surprise increase. Not the fact that there is an increase, is the fact that how we don't know what it is until we know December or January's inflation rate. And that has led to some particularly hefty increases for us. So there's been a lot of pressure for this to be revamped and to be changed. And they are not going to be able to do this. From the 17th of January, they are no longer going to be able to have, for new contracts, so it will happen when you take out a new contract, this change will take place for you. They'll no longer be able to do this kind of, who knows what's going to go up by next year. So that's a good thing. But the bad thing, as we have discussed before, is that the replacement is an increase in pound and pence. So you'll know exactly what your increase is going to be each year. So you pay this now when you sign up for a new deal, but next year it'll be this, and the year after that will be that. The problems we saw when a couple of BT have done this, Vodafone I think have done this, when the people have done this ahead of the new rules, just getting ahead of the game, those pound and pence increases have been flat rate, no matter what it is you're currently paying, which means for some people, that is a really, really, really high increase that they were going to face on their bills, way higher than what inflation was going to be, particularly when the inflation rate has now dropped down from when it was that kind of, we were looking at double digits just not too long ago. So mixed feelings about this. I guess if you are in contract, this is about in contract increases. If you're in contract, look for what that is. At least you'll know exactly how much your bill is going to go up next year, even if it might end up being quite a hefty part of the bill as a percentage. At least you'll know what's going on. But if you are out of contract, then you find these increases are really hefty. It's just a reminder, don't stick with your business. Either move to somebody else, switch away, or haggle. And in fact, when we talk about community stories later on, we've got a really good example where someone has haggled, so we will return to that later.
So I not that long ago I was hit twice. So I got a surprise hike, and I didn't know how much it was going to be. And it was my driving instructor. I was like, oh, hi. And he's like, yeah, I need to raise my prices. And I was like, okay, do you need to raise them for me? And he was like, for everyone. And I was like, oh my God. And he was like, it's only a £5 for the 2-hour lesson I have. And I was like, yeah, but it's still like almost 10% of what I'm paying. And and he didn't see it that way. And I did. And it made me quite cross. But I stuck with him because we already had a relationship now. I've been learning to drive for ages. Which leads us on to the next story, which is all about the biggest frustrations that people have with financial services, so much so that it drives them to leave. So this is based on joint research with Be Clever With Your Cash and our sister site, Smart Money People. And it's showing that like the biggest pet peeves people have seems to be comms based rather than price hike based. So the research suggests that almost half of people said they ditched their firm if they didn't offer access to a human customer service agent, whereas a third said they'd leave as a result of untrained or unknowledgeable staff. And then having no available phone number and an over reliance on chatbots were also top reasons given for dumping providers. So it kind of makes sense to me. I'm like, yeah, it is really annoying when you're not being heard or you can't get through. I remember in lockdown, there was loads of issues with the phone lines. I did like a story on it where I called up all of the banks to find out how long I was kept waiting. And it was ridiculous. And I was just like, oh my God, like if you can't speak to someone, then what's the point? But the second part of this research was looking at, when people say something. So what we found was that people don't tend to leave reviews or even feedback to the company when they're unhappy. So I mean, are you a complainer?
I'll complain if I need to, if there's
Hmm.
something that I feel isn't right. And yeah, you sort of follow it through. And there is that kind of frustration at times for a small amount of money and how much effort it can take to go through all of that to try and get that back. But there's a bit of me that's like, it's the principle. I don't want them to get away with it, because a number of like, if you get hundreds or thousands of people with small amounts not complaining, then that's money that they, whoever it is, whether it's a financial institution, which we're obviously talking about in the research here, or any kind of business, that's not fair. So I do stick with it. But it's one of those things, I think, if you can avoid it, well, you never want to experience it, do you? I mean, years ago, this isn't a financial one, but I mean, with broadband, I had we had Talk broadband, and it was so much hell talking to them that I vowed I'm never going to have broadband with Talk again. Doesn't matter if they have a complete revamp, I'm not going to do it. And I wrote about that and sort of shared that experience with people. And I think there is a big part of telling people what your experiences are, good and bad. And I'll shout about stuff here. We do it all the time. If something's good, we talk about it as well. But really does make a difference. I think that's a big part of what this, I guess, we were trying to get to with this research, wasn't it, as well? Like, are you telling people? You say, are you leaving reviews? A lot of people don't. So how do people know what your experience is?
That's exactly it. And I think beyond, I mean, when I think I really hate complaining. It makes me feel sort of bad in my soul. But I always try and give the company like the benefit of the doubt or other things, recently I've made some noise complaints to some neighbors anonymously. I mean, yeah, don't out me. But
You've kind of like, they've known now, don't they? They've seen you around.
yeah, no, fine. But I'm like, you know what? They may not know. I think it's really important to be like, you know what, benefit of the doubt. They might not know how much this has affected me, and I need to let them know the inconvenience or the stress that it's caused me and the inefficiency. And I don't think you need to be angry. I don't think you need to be rude. I just think you kind of need to lay it out, which is what I've done in my anonymous letters. Doing the-
Yeah, I think, obviously we have a lot of reviews of mainly bank accounts and savings accounts and credit cards, but also loyalty schemes, over on the site, lots of things where we do our analysis and we look at it and we tell you what we think. But that's not always going to chime in with your own experiences. So, please do let us know. Have a comment on the articles, leave, messages in the Facebook group, or you can also leave reviews at Smart Money People for financial stuff. Our sister site, as I'm sure many of you know now, it's a great resource. So you can put some stuff there, good and bad, because both of them help people make that decision and hopefully avoid any nasty things happening to them later on. A report that I want to share this week came from HyperJar, who are kind of like a budgeting app and do other bits and pieces, spoken about them a few times. But what was interesting, well, a few interesting points here, but a lot of it kind of does sort of speak about what we do at Be Clever With Your Cash. So I thought it was worth sharing some of this. The headline was that we spend £1.2 million in our lifetimes and earn £1.4 million, which is, that's the headline they're going with. It's interesting. It's a lot of money to spend over, 70, 80 years. But what they kind of say is actually you can earn even more on top of that. And that is through making some simple changes to how you spend your money. Now, obviously, they're doing that to try and push different products they've got. But it is the kind of thing that when I started Be Clever With Your Cash 10 and a half years ago now, it was always about all the little hacks, all the little tricks where you can get that a little bit more, and some of you will know this stuff and you think it's common sense. Other you will kind of be like, oh, didn't really think about that, or I forgot to do that. and where you kind of don't buy everything branded, get the kind of the own brand alternatives. And they've kind of added up in this report how much those things can kind of come to over the years. One of the things is buying in bulk and the savings you can make with that. I'm not always convinced. Maybe we'll talk about that in a second. But it's really interesting they talk about all those different things, how much they can add up to. And they said they gave it a figure of just over £3,000 a year you can make from, thinking smartly, essentially being clever with your cash. They don't say that, we can say that, but on all those different products you buy. And I just thought sometimes it gets lost in when we're talking about different savings accounts and other sort of things, that just the simple stuff in how you spend can make such a big difference. And then, of course, you can take that money you've saved and then put it into savings accounts with high interest rates, or put it into investing or your pension or whatever it might be, and let it grow and let it compound over the year. And I think those two things, they do work together. Sometimes people say, oh, what's the point in the small stuff? I'm just going to whack it in investing and make all the money that way. And they ignore all those things. But you do the two together, and that's how you are going to, over your lifetime, really give yourself so much more spending power and really give yourself that quality of life you want, particularly, the older you get and maybe your income drops down. It's so important to remember that stuff. And I just want to bring it up to remind you guys, there's so much over on the site. So do just check out all those kind of normal everyday money spending things. It's not just, particularly on the YouTube channel, we do focus, say, on those kind of financial products, but there's loads more on the site to help you just, make the most of your money. But bulk spending, what do you think about bulk buying?
So my issue with the report was when I looked at the table and it was like 10 like common household items like shampoo, honey, rice, loo roll. All of it was branded. So it was like Andrex loo roll, yeah, Pantene shampoo, expensive rice, expensive honey. And of course, if that's like what you want to buy, oh my God, do it. Love that for you. But they were doing the comparison from that. And I was like, I don't think I definitely spend less on loo roll than Andrex. I definitely don't buy Pantene shampoo. I definitely don't buy. I buy own brown rice. All the stuff. I was like, oh, I get why they've done it because they're probably the things on like the repeats, or kind of like they're the ones that you can buy in bulk. But I was like, oh, okay. It would have been more interesting to see some of the other points that they made in the report around buying own brand, kind of reflected in the bulk buying argument. But I see, yeah, we were talking about Costco, and my grandparents used to do business buying at the cash and carry like a million years ago. And I'm not, yeah, when I've looked at prices for an individual, I'm like, I don't know how clear it is about how much you're saving. And also, do most people have loads of space to put like 800 toilet rolls for the year? Like, I think I'd be interested. I'm not convinced by it.
It's
But
interesting, isn't it?
yeah.
I mean, my thing on bulk buying is there is the big risk for me is that you buy all this stuff because you see this fantastic price, and assuming you have got the space for it. And some people do have little special rooms, don't they, for all this kind of, you see it sometimes, for their storing of stuff. You've got to watch for dates. That's really important. Often people buy loads of something, bulk buy it, but then it's it's for the sake of it. But then you've got to use it all up before the date, or if it goes off and it isn't fine to eat, then you've kind of wasted money there. But also you might just change the product that you have. So I think there's a kind of a balance there in how much you do go for this stuff. You've got to find a good price and be really, really confident that you absolutely are going to use it. But the bigger issue, I think, for lots of people, and we saw this obviously during the lockdowns when some people were going out and clearing the supermarket shelves, other people were like unable to do this, is access to the cash to do it. So if you don't have the money available to buy 50 toilet rolls in one go, then you're not going to be able to take advantage of those savings. But I still think if you can do it to some extent on the right products, it's one of those little hacks which is worth a look. But you don't want to be buying stuff just for the sake of it, which I think brings us on potentially to another big story we've got.
Yeah, the big bottomless con. I will explain. So yeah, earlier this year, I was gifted a voucher for a bottomless pizza experience for two. And it was a Gordon Ramsay street pizza restaurant in London. And I was like, cool, we've got to do it. Let's do it. And yeah, I was just really disappointed. I was like, I know I had a voucher, so that kind of cut the cost. But essentially, when the menu, it was £20 per person for bottomless pizza for, I can't remember, 90 minutes or 2 hours or something. And I was like, oh, cool. Like, we'll be ordering as much pizza as we want and it will be delicious. But it didn't work that way. Essentially, the pizza came out when it came out, and then a member of staff would walk around the restaurant serving it to you slice by slice, and you had no control over what pizza came out. You had no control of when the pizza got to you, and the pizza wasn't even that good anyway. And I love pizza, and I was like, oh, this is not great. And then you had to kind of obviously pay for drinks, and they put 15% service charge on at the end, which I'm happy to pay because the staff were great. But we ended up paying £40, like 40 quid anyway. And I was like, oh,
Yeah.
this. And then I was really stuffed because at the beginning, I was like, I'm just going to eat everything. And then I overate, and then I just couldn't speak on the train home. And I was like, is bottomless really worth it? And so I did some digging into different deals. And yeah, I'm not sure. I mean, no bottomless deal is the same as another. But I wasn't convinced that all of them offer the value that they promise. We get excited. We're like, oh my God, unlimited food, unlimited drink. This is really exciting. And like, we're going to get our money's worth. But the catches, as I identified, were you're kind of at the mercy of staff and like service. So if it's really busy and you go at peak time, if there's a service part to it, you're not going to be getting as much as you could. Some places have restrictions. So, for example, this place that I looked at, which is like a Pan Asian restaurant, they will only serve you more food when 75% of the dishes have been eaten. So, if you're with a group and you're with some slow eaters, they could hold you back. Limited menu is another one. So, if you're a fussy eater or you like a bit of choice, as I do, there's often a small menu of food and drinks. So it might not be one for you. You could actually end up spending more than you might if you go out. So my favorite pizza place near me, I think, a pizza and like a bottle of wine between two. We're sort of definitely spending like less than a bottomless deal would be for two. And we enjoy it. And I can, take some home for a doggy bag the next day. So really happy. And then finally, you could end up overindulging because the meal becomes all about consuming. And that could be with booze or that could be with food. And you could just end up kind of ruining your day, or becoming so drunk you have to go home. And I've seen it happen.
Yeah. It's interesting, isn't it? Because it is everywhere now, bottomless. It's something that's been around for such a long time. But whatever's happened for the last couple of years, I feel like it's really caught the imagination, if not of punters, but certainly of restaurants as a way of kind of getting them in through the doors. And yeah, I'm with you. I think it sounds like it's a great opportunity to get value for money. But those reasons you listed out just there, yeah, I'm with you. The vast majority of the time, I think you're going to be better off if we're just talking here purely about going for the food, forgetting necessarily when there's like the extra entertainment that's out going in. Obviously, you're paying for that as well in the price. If there's like, drag bingo or 90s DJs or whatever it might be that's going on. If you're going just for a food purpose, yeah, I think really, really take a look at it and go, are you better off just, if you're allowed to, because sometimes at certain times places will just only have that bottomless menu, won't they? But if you can just order off the menu, get what you want, so you've got the full choice, and what you need. Yeah, and ultimately, yeah, maybe it costs more per pancake, but if you only have 2 pancakes rather than 10, then actually it is going to save you a fair amount of cash. I've not really done more here in the UK, but I remember years ago we went to Las Vegas and we went to some like really high-end buffets. Like the food was really good, and I really loved the idea that you could try all these different things, but they weren't cheap. And ultimately, like, did I enjoy that experience? Like, yeah. But if I was ever to go back, I wouldn't go to one, and I would just go to a nice restaurant, which would, because there's some nice places there, spend less, not overeat, not feel sick, and enjoy the rest of the day. There's another story I want to talk about here, which is kind of almost, this is all you can drink rather than all you can eat. And it comes to hot drinks, almost all you can drink. And this is a story that did break it into last week, but it just after we'd finished filming the episode, so we weren't able to cover it then. So you might already have heard about this, but I want to talk about it anyway because it has hit the headlines, and a few kind of quite outraged people out there about this. And this is around Pret. Pret has, for a good few years now, I read the article years ago, it always does well on Google results. People search for this, there's still an interest in it. They have a thing called Club Pret, And I'm sure many of you know this already, but for 30 quid a month, you can have 5 free hot drinks every day and 20% off the food as well. Now, that, whether it's good or bad, I guess ultimately depends on how much coffee or hot drinks that you go for, how many you buy in a month, and whether you like to shop around. But if you are dedicated to Pret or don't really care and you do consume a lot, or maybe you're a bit cheeky and you might get drinks for other friends and family as well, then it may well have been kind of, decent value for money. But that's going to change. And this is what the headline is. They have said that they are going to revamp it from the end of September. It's going to go from 5 free drinks a day to 50% off 5 free drinks every day. So obviously you're getting a lot less for your money, but the money's also going to drop down. So for the first 6 months, it's going to be £5 a month, whether you're an existing or a new customer. And if you are after that, it's going to go up to £10 a month. And yeah, a lot of people have been quite angry about this. A lot of existing members are angry about this. I mean, at least they've been told in time. So you've got notice where you can like cancel it if you want to before the change comes along. I'm kind of a little bit more, basically, spending 30 quid a month for coffees. If you're doing that anyway, as I said, then great. If you aren't, if you're a more kind of a casual coffee drinker, or you do like to go to different places and not just go to Pret all the time, I think this new deal actually might be better for you. So just to cover that £10 membership, if a coffee costs about 4 quid, you only need to buy 5 drinks in a month for you to make that money back, and then you're saving after that. Now, if you were buying 20, 5 a day or 20 a month, whatever it might be, you're going to be out of pocket. But if you're just getting the odd one, then I don't think it's going to be too bad. Again, I'm not a coffee drinker, so maybe for me, I'm looking at it from a complete point of view. Whereas if you are, this was like a great thing for you. I mean, what were your thoughts?
I think it's the perception of the freeness, isn't it? I think that's what was really exciting for the people who loved it, where it's like, yeah, once you've paid the monthly fee, it's like, yeah, but it's a free for all now. So it doesn't matter. And I think I have a bit of a problem with paying for discounts.
Like Prime membership. We've talked about that before.
Yeah. So I'm like, I have it, like a car boot sale. I'm like, why am I paying? Or like a market. I'm like, why am I paying to get into this space to then buy things? Like they do it with vintage markets sometimes. I'm like, that bothers me, even though the stuff the other side of the barrier is discounted. I'm just like, I don't like paying for that privilege. I don't know. But I think it's a psychological thing. But what I loved was that the men online gave it like the breaking news treatment. So they've had to put it up so quickly that they didn't even put a photo, which they save for like special stories. And I had a look, on social media, and people are quite unhappy about it. But James Kirkup, he works for a think tank and an advisory service, and he also writes for the Times. He was on a podcast saying he did have the membership, and he says he's now relieved that he's no longer shackled to Pret, because he found it was like he was going there because he had the membership, getting his coffee, and then buying like, an unimaginative sandwich or just the same old salad for lunch. And he was like, actually, I feel quite relieved now that I can use my imagination to have kind of more creative things for lunch. So pros and cons.
Yeah, we're looking. I mean, when it does change in September, we'll do a proper analysis of those different sort of break-even points for you all as well, so you can make a call about whether you want to stick with it or even try it for the first time. And it'd be interesting to see as well what Leon do, because only just a few months ago they introduced their own subscription version of this. So obviously in response to Pret, interesting to see whether they continue with it, whether they put the prices up, or we'll obviously let you know what happens there. Right. Few more things to sort of end the episode on, and we always like to kind of give you guys a bit of a shout out what you guys have been up to over in our Facebook community. If you aren't already a member, please do join us. becleverwithyourcash.com/community is the URL. Great place to ask your questions, but also let us know what you've been up to. And this one from there was from Luke. I mentioned, we'll come back to this about haggling. He said, I got a win against Sky. I was paying $79.99 a month, and then the renewal was bringing it up to $94.99 a month. And that was after they said they were going to give him a £5 loyalty discount. I mean, that's a huge amount of money. There's going to be a lot of things in there, be broadband. I'm sure there's landline in there, plus all different packages. But it's a lot of money to be spending. But Luke said he didn't just try and haggle with them. and this is a trick that I've used before with Virgin Media for the broadband, and I love this. He just said, "I'm going to cancel," and he left it a few days before the cancellation was due to come through. And I think potentially he was still going to go ahead. He doesn't say whether he was ready to move elsewhere, but just before the cancellation, Sky got in touch by text and saying, "Can you give us a call?" So there is this desperation. And actually, when he gave them a call, and they brought the price down to just below what he was paying before. So I still think it's quite pricey, Luke, and maybe you might be able to ditch some of those services, but leave that till next time. But you still manage to avoid effectively a £20 a month increase by that. 240 quid a year. That's a massive saving they've got. So if you takes a bit of nerves slightly to kind of hold out, but don't forget you can always backtrack. You can always change your mind. You don't have to cancel these services. But it's an interesting tactic to try. Really sort of push them until you ultimately like these guys are going to go. What can we do to save them? Bring the bills down a little bit more. And Luke also shared that he and the wife got £175 from switching to Lloyd's, and they're moving on to Barclays next, which is great. And the other one I want to share with you wasn't so much a comment, but this was a question that popped up, and it kind of puzzled me slightly. And I was like, I wonder what this is. I'll look into it. But fortunately, someone else came in and gave the answer. But an anonymous member of the group said, has there been another increase to the TV license fee? I was expecting it to go up to £14.12, but my direct debit has changed to £15. Well, that is a bit odd, because it did go up in April for the first time in a long time. It was able to sort of increase. But why has it gone up by that? But this answer could be useful to some of you guys in the same sort of situation. Lance said it's because when you pay for your TV license, it comes out every month, but you're not paying for that month. You're actually paying 6 months in advance. So when you first get it, you actually pay for a year and 6 months. Those first 6 payments are actually double payments. And then after that, so let's say, what is it now? It's July still now. You're actually paying, your July payment is actually for your January license fee. So what had happened to this person? Their payments from October to March had been at the rate then of the license fee of £13 something. But it was for the costs from April through to the coming September, when the cost is actually £14.12. So that £15 is actually making up the deficit that have been on. So it's a weird way of doing it. I don't think it's communicated massively well. So I think a lot of people might be faced with a similar thing and be a bit, why is it that when it's meant to be that? But if for some reason you pay for your TV license 6 months in advance. And that one last thing on this also reminded me of that. Not that I think you should cancel your license fee. I think it's a good thing what we get for it, but a lot of people don't agree with that. And in fact, there were reports from the BBC this week showing just quite how many people, a large increase in people axing it. If you do decide to cancel your license fee, well, you have paid in advance, 6 months in advance. So make sure you do claim. If it doesn't come automatically, hopefully it would. If it doesn't come automatically, make sure you do claim that refund. But do stick with it. I think it's well worth the money. There we go. That's it for this week.
Brilliant. Yeah, thank you so much for joining us. If you want to read the articles we've spoken about today, you can find them at becleverwithyourcash.com or in the show notes.
We'll be back with another episode on Tuesday. So have a great weekend and we'll see you then. Cheers.
Bye.